And then I've also seen a JQ, which is kind of like a really big SUV. I have a Mini Cooper, so my sizes are a little skewed, but
Welcome back to Car-Pinionated, our weekly show on cars, the car industry, and driving in general. I'm here with our special international correspondent, Maddie Cowdell, who is she's a journalist and she's based in Toronto, correct?
that's right. Yeah,
Okay. And Glenn Packman, who is our Fairfield County correspondent and based in Fairfield County.
There you go.
Um, well, welcome both of you.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk about um, the Chinese coming to Canada.
Mm.
So the thumbnail version of this is that uh, Canada is allowing the sales of about 50,000 EVs from China. And they are in January, they dropped the tariff from 100% to 6%, I think, or
that's
they're
right.
about 6.1. So, Maddie, tell us why this came about and maybe what you see on the ground there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Doug, for having me. It's really a pleasure. Yeah, so the intention was to diversify trade. So, as it's probably no secret, but tensions between Canada and the US are at a high. There was a lot of tariffs that impacted our economy here. And so Prime Minister Carney was really adamant about diversifying trade. His government no longer saw the US as a reliable trading partner. And one thing to look at was China. China is a huge market. Obviously, they have a lot of goods to offer. And so the trade was we would drop the tariffs, which were at 100% based on what we call CUSMA. In the US, it's USMCA, and other agreements with the US already for autos. And they dropped, as you said, to 6.1% for tariffs. And in exchange, Canadian goods would have lowered tariffs. So we're looking at things like canola, lobster, crab, so like seafood products as well that had high tariffs in China. They got dropped in exchange as part of the deal.
And so, have you seen? I mean, it's really early on in this process, but have you seen Chinese cars around?
I have actually. I've seen two different models. They're now in the testing phase, so they're not available to the public. They're not out for sale anywhere. The models that I've seen all have manufacturer license plates on them, so they're being tested by the manufacturer on our roads. But I've seen like a car. It's the Exceed RX.
Mhm.
And then I've also seen a JQ, which is kind of like a really big SUV. I have a Mini Cooper, so my sizes are a little skewed, but the JQ seemed to be like a very large kind of SUV.
And so what I found out was that BYD, one of the big brands,
Mhm.
wants to bring in something called the Seagull, which is a sub $30,000 uh, Canadian, I'm assuming, is a city hatchback, and an ATTO3 compact SUV is about 42,000. And a Seal, which is 49,000 Canadian. Um, the interesting thing that I found here was that uh, Tesla looks to make out very well in this process because their prices for um, they're bringing in Shanghai built Model 3s, and for very, very inexpensive money. Um, Something that is, that they had been very expensive before. Are there a lot of Teslas in Canada?
There are. It is quite a popular vehicle, especially something that I've seen around the Toronto area. Um, the Trudeau government had EV mandates in place, and so there was a lot of tax breaks, a lot of incentives to buy electric vehicles in general here. Drivers in Ontario, and specifically the Toronto area, are allowed to use the HOV lanes. Um, Even if there's only one person, like the driver in a car. And so like there's a lot of other benefits to owning an electric vehicle here. So yeah, I would say I see Teslas all the time. They're quite popular.
Yeah. Glenn, what do you think of the Chinese coming to Canada?
Well, uh, ports in a storm, I guess, is what pops into my mind when, when all the trade craziness came about. It sort of made sense for this to happen. And you know, frankly, good on the Canadians and the Chinese for striking up a deal, and bad on us for, boxing ourselves out of this. I have very pointed views on the tariffs. I won't go into that, but I don't think uh, I don't think it's helping to promote the global community. And I mean, some of us can try to pretend that we don't have a global marketplace. We most definitely do. And I think the more we embrace that, the better. And I think there's a lot of, forgive me, I think there's a lot of anti-Chinese sentiment that isn't founded properly. I think because China has made so many inexpensive goods for use in the United States, that people automatically think that Chinese product is cheap. And the cars that I'm seeing come out of China don't look cheap at all. Now, I really can't speak for their reliability ratings at this point, but they certainly don't, they don't come across as cheesy or, something that's inexpensive. And furthermore, we have a long-standing history of putting down cars from Asia and writing them off as cheap in this country. Toyota, when they first came here, people were like, "Oh, that's a tin can. It'll never last." Well, look where Toyota is today.
Right.
Kia and Hyundai, same thing from South Korea. So maybe it's the Chinese turn at this. And so I think it's good business sense, and congratulations. And I believe in the more circulation we get automotively speaking in the world, the better. Why not? All cars for all people. So can we all join hands and now sing Kumbaya? Is my question.
Kumbaya.
Um, I think I think there's I think there's the Chinese are making great strides in Europe, and they're looking at partnerships with Stellantis to build cars in plants that are have lower capacity, solving a problem for Stellantis because they want to keep those workers employed and doing work, and the Chinese companies can walk in and build a car rather than building a plant, which will take several years. And
Right.
and you know, and it gets the cars into consumers' hands quicker. You also have like, notably, and we've mentioned this before, Jim Farley has the head of Ford has had it, in the past had a Chinese car and he didn't want to give it up. I mean, that's what he drove for a while, and really was impressed with the quality and all those things. I mean, the ones I've seen, I'm not a great fan of the style, but that's a personal preference, right? Um, and and I think they've made great strides in their automotive quality. I mean, look at everyone has a phone that was probably built in China,
Right.
and
Right.
or this computer that I'm working on, or those monitors, or whatever. It's a world economy, and they're the Chinese. I don't think you can make a case for the Chinese not being a player. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just in the past decade at least, but going back 20 years, I think that that's easily the case. I
Right.
think also that there's, um, you know, I think the very first Chinese cars that were made in the country were terrible. right? Those cars 20 years ago were really, they were copies of, cars that were made in the US, and they were unsafe. I mean, there's famously, crash tests where the cars just disintegrated. But that's the past, and they're building cars that are world class. You have Lincoln builds what is the Lincoln build? Did they build the Nautilus, or they build the Nautilus in China.
Mhm.
Buick builds the
Envision.
Envision, right?
So yes, it's
Um,
the Envision that's built in China.
right.
Yeah.
And Buick's success story in China is really, it's really very good.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, they're quite
and
popular there, from what I
They are.
understand.
They are. That
yeah,
it's as a Buick owner, and we've talked about this on this podcast many times before. My Buick is from South Korea, but the Envision is from China. There is something about the mark in China that is just extremely desirable. Chinese love the Buick brand, and it's so funny because I'll dip into conversations on one of the social networks here that shall go nameless, and get into conversations with people, and they'll tell me, you see a lot of people like why hasn't GM shuttered Buick? What's the point? They're not selling well in the United States. Why are they keeping them around? And I always chime in to say, yeah, Buick is not a major player in the US market anymore, but they do have sales here. But the real point is that they're selling huge amounts in China. And that is good business for a US brand. Now, one of the models is being built in China, two of them from South Korea, but there is the largest one being made here in the United States. So again, that global network, and at its core, GM is a US company. Now I know they have multinational concerns and they're all over the globe, but they're based in the US. So it's good business for us, right? So I try to want to give these people a warm hug and tell them to just start thinking globally. It's
We
good for us to think globally.
and
So
we have a GM facility here. They don't make Buicks, but Oshawa is known as our own Motor City,
yeah,
as well. And they've recently had some layoffs due to tariffs, and as well as
yeah,
production keeps moving to the US.
right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's just sad. That's sad. I,
And
I,
Brampton, the
Yeah.
Stellantis plant in Brampton, I mean,
mhm.
those poor folks have been ping-ponged around.
Yeah, those were three. So I'm glad you brought up Stellantis, because I was going to mention that as well. Because that factory in Brampton, 3,000 workers were furloughed back in March, when Jeep moved production. I believe was it the Compass SUV? It was an SUV,
I think so.
um,
Yeah.
and brought the production from Brampton down to Illinois. And so they are looking at building some sort of EV component at that facility, because like you said, the infrastructure is already there, the factory is standing, and now you have thousands of workers who know how to do cars looking for work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, we're going to take a
I,
quick break. Glenn, hold your thought, and
okay.
we'll come back in a minute. Glenn, you had something that you were going to say.
I was just going to throw in that one of my new cars from the past was a U.S. brand made in Windsor, Ontario. So
Hey,
yeah, we had a 2006 Chrysler Pacifica,
yeah.
terrific car. That was before the Pacifica was a minivan, and it was a cross between an SUV and a station wagon. It was really a station wagon, but it had all-wheel drive, had a third row, a comfortable third row, and was really a terrific car. We handed that car down in the family and kept it around for a couple 100,000 miles, and really an excellent vehicle. Everybody was always impressed with our Pacifica, and people were like, "Oh, U.S. brand," and I'm like, "Yeah,
No,
made right over the border, but absolutely international." So
it's ours. Yeah, the Craftsman, Canadian workers are known to be very hardy, and really,
yeah,
they turn out some really popular vehicles.
yeah.
Mhm.
And we make Toyotas, as well as
Mhm.
Hondas, and you know, it's Ontario, where I live, is known as a hub for car manufacturing. We have a lot of really strong, popular models here. And so, like, all the more reason why it's important for the Canadian government, the Ontario government, to really fight for these jobs, because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really, from the top down in these communities, you see the impacts once layoffs start.
Mhm. Which one of the, either the Bricklin or the DeLorean was built in Newfoundland?
The Brooklyn, yeah. I thought it was New Brunswick, but it's definitely
Maybe
down east
I could be
somewhere.
wrong. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a truly
Looking it up.
100% Canadian car.
I'm looking it up.
Look at you.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember, things I really need, but I can tell you it's crazy automotive trivia. Uh, um, Glenn's
The
looking up something.
Yes, the Bricklin SV1 was built in St. John, New Brunswick
There you go.
from 1974 to 76. I was actually in the school I went to was actually K through 12. And I remember that the senior class president and also the editor of the yearbook and someone who went to Harvard after graduation, her family had a little bit of money and she showed up one day with a brand new Brooklyn. That was her graduation present in advance. And it was beautiful. I mean, it's kind of weird looking today, but back then it was just a showstopper. So
Yeah, it's
Oh,
gull
not.
wing doors and
I
yeah.
think it's a fine looking car. For its time, it's a
Yeah.
little dated, but
Yeah.
I don't. I think it's aged fairly well.
The retractable nose is the thing that
Yeah,
always made me go
yeah,
about that car. But other than that, I mean, it was revolutionary for the time.
yeah. So one thing about Maddie that she is happy to talk to you about is her Mini Coopers. So I
yes.
what interests me about the Mini Coopers is how much of a community that you have found there, and not just in certain places, but wherever you've been and you've had a career that's brought you different places. Can you talk about that? What the Mini Cooper community is like? Why
Yeah,
it's important to you?
absolutely. It's my favorite thing about owning a Mini Cooper, quite frankly. When I bought my first Mini, the dealer made a point. He's like, "You're not just buying a car, you're buying a lifestyle." And I'm like, "Okay, what does that really mean?" And they hand you a pamphlet of rules. You have to wave to other Mini drivers. You have to park next to another Mini if you see one. Like, there's this whole long list of rules, and yeah, I have not been lonely, and no matter where I've lived, I've always found other Mini Cooper drivers, and we do rallies together frequently, mostly in the summer months up here in Canada. Obviously, the winter is not very fun to drive in, so it's rally season now. We just had our first one at the end of April, and yeah, we get together, we just drive around, no matter where you are, and you find these really fun back roads. You slip the car into sport mode and you just go. And no matter where you are, you always find, like, I don't know, anywhere from like 10 to 30 different minis.
Hmm.
In the United States, they have an event every few years called Mini Takes the States. And I did it back in 2022, and we drove from Vermont down to South Carolina. And we did all back roads, winding our way through New England into the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and then into Maryland and Virginia, and then obviously ultimately ending in the Carolinas. And in previous years, they've done cross country, and yeah, it's a huge culture and community. I love it.
That's
And is
cool.
it something that the company did, or was this a grassroots effort?
Yeah, so Mini USA is very heavily involved in the planning of Mini Takes the States in particular, but a lot of these groups are just grassroots. They're right there, organized on Facebook, or other social media. And yeah, it's just whoever owns the Mini shows up to these. You find your group online, and you get connected, and everybody just organizes right there at your local level.
Cool. So one of the things we do here at Car-Pinionated is um, we tell brands how to do better. um, we've made some suggestions for Acura and Infiniti and Chrysler, and sometimes they listen to us. Um, I don't think they actually listen to us, but sometimes the things that we've talked about they've actually done. Um, so if you were to, so let me, as an outsider to the Mini brand, what I look at when I see the brand is I see a lot of fun. I see a lot of personality. I see a lot of joy in the car. But I think they're kind of hamstrung by this design language. And I don't know how you get around that because I think it's like even the what is it? Is it the Countryman? The Countryman's a big Mini.
Yeah.
You know, Glenn used to have an X1 and it's essentially an X1.
Oh, I believe they use the same platform.
Right,
The
right,
Countryman's built on the X1 platform.
right.
Yeah.
So if if suddenly they called you up and said, Maddie, tell us what's wrong, tell us what we need to do right. What would you tell them?
Yeah, first of all, bring back manual transmission.
Okay.
That's the first first thing I'd say. Secondly, I would remind them of their roots. These are go-karts. These are, we've got switches because we don't have fancy buttons, a giant clock speedometer. I've been finding these newer minis are very BMW. They've got a lot of gadgets. They've got a lot of touch screens, and especially the newer ones. They've got this giant circular screen, which I love the design of it because it calls back to that original Mini Cooper with the clock face speedometer right in the center console. Um, but we're now everything's controlled through that center screen,
Right.
and it's lost its appeal as like the fun go-kart. Like it's just basically another car, and they're all so big now too.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
like you said with the Countryman. Yeah, so get back to your roots of being like the drifter go-kart and a little less BMW.
Okay. And I guess that's hard because as the economy of scale in the automotive business, that you have to build a bunch of cars on the same platform to make it
Yeah.
cost effective. And God knows Volkswagen has done that forever.
Forever.
But I I I I would like to see them push their design language in a different direction. Not for everything. I think you keep that main car as, as the iconic style, but I think you push the Countryman and whatever else do they sell something else besides the Countryman? I should
They
have looked this.
they used to sell a Clubman, which was like a station wagon with the barn doors in the
That's
back.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But they've discontinued that one too.
Okay.
As more people, they've really tried to push the Countryman over the years, as more people buy larger vehicles. They also used to sell a like a coupe with it was a
Right.
hard top convertible.
Right.
They
Mhm.
discontinued those many, many years ago. I want to say like 2013-ish. And yeah, they started to, like I said, started to phase out a lot of these smaller vehicles in favor
Yeah.
of the big ones.
Because I drove last year. There was a car journalist thing, and I honestly, I think I told you when I texted you when I drove it, like it
Yeah.
was the first Mini I had ever driven, and it was a lot of fun. And I called it the personality hire of the day because it was the one that just like it was cute, it was fun, it was like exactly what I was hoping it would be. And I think you keep that as your icon, and then you've kind of figure out a way to move away from that. You know,
Yep.
so many brands have one car, Ford for years, the Thunderbird didn't always look like every other Ford, depending on the year. But and I think that that's maybe a way to go. I I I think you're right, absolutely right about a standard transmission. And Glenn and I both love standard transmission vehicles.
Hey.
Yeah.
But I think that those are I hope those BMW sells an awful lot of standard transmission cars.
I know.
Yeah. But anyway, well, now that we fixed Mini and we can add Mini as being fixed to our list of cars that companies that we've
Check.
All
Come see me.
right. Yeah. Maddie, thank you. It's always good to talk to you.
Likewise,
I'm
Doug.
glad that we got the chance to catch up. And thank you for joining us. And with that, we're gonna land the plane, as we say here. You can watch more episodes of Car-Pinionated on YouTube. And with that, we will see you next time.